I'd like to say hello to everyone in the audience. Today's topic is how to transform customer contact in the contact center, which I think is going to be an interesting topic because we've seen a lot of change that's happened in contact centers in the last 5 years. Probably much more rate of change than I've seen in any other 5-year period in the industry. So I'll be doing the introductions. Then I'd like to introduce to you Paul Wield, who's a contact center innovator with Deloitte Digital, and Paul's going to be taking us through some of the human factors of transforming customer contact. Paul, I think we first met probably 10, 15 years ago, and you've been in the industry a long time. Yes. Long time since then. You're probably best known to our readers through some of the articles you've written, and in particular some of your judging of the European Call Center Awards. I thought was quite interesting. Do you find that it's getting tougher to win an award these days as more contact centers getting smarter?
Yeah, I mean, it's a real privilege to have the opportunity to visit a number of contact centres, particularly those that aspire to do well. I think it's something that we all have in common, and it does give you some unique insight into some of the latest trends, some of the latest things that people are applying and are actually working. I'm not sure if it's necessarily harder. I think it's getting a bit more specialist because of all the different channels that are now being supported. But at the end of the day, it's actually all about two things. One is focus on the customer, and you do that by having very engaged employees. And if your audience have those two ingredients, then please don't hesitate to actually apply to the award schemes and get sort of recognition.
Yeah, that's very good indeed. Very good. And also, we're going to be going across to the news desk where Megan will be taking us through top tips and questions. Then delighted to introduce to you a new speaker to our webinar program, Stuart Dorman from Savio. You've been with Savio, you said, 15 years. That's quite a long time. I guess you've seen a lot of change happen over that.
Yes, I have. Yes, 15 years with Savio, 15 years working in the call centre industry. And yes, I think, as you said, John, at the start, the last 5 years in particular have been the biggest in terms of the change that I've seen in my career. The use of social media, for example, lots more, the array of different methods that consumers have to communicate with organisations now is vast compared to what it was a few years back, which was really just voice and email, to a lesser degree. So, yeah, I think there's been a lot of change, and I think it will continue to change over the next few years as well.
Yeah. Well, we'll be looking at how we can influence that change when we get on to Stuart's and Paul's presentations. And then we'll, as ever, have top tips from the audience. If you're not logged in already into our chat room, it's callcenterhelper.com/chat, and you can leave your tips and questions in the chat room. If you want a replay of today's webinar, we're going through a lot of detailed content, callcenterhelper.com/recorded webinars. And there will be an event that Savio are going to be holding later in the year, about June time. So an invite will be sent to you by Savio to attend a live event. So that will be sent out after the webinar. callcenterhelper.com/chat. Once you're logged into the chat room, this link here, download webinar slides, and you can take the slides down from there. Right, what I'd like to do is I'd like to start off, we're looking at contact center transformation. So I'd like to poll a question of the audience, which is, how would you rate your contact center? Would you rate it as outstanding, as good, as average, could do better, or poor? Paul, what would your anticipation be of what the answer is going to be on that? Do you think they're all going to score themselves very highly?
I hope we don't get too many sort of poor ones, John. That would be slightly sort of disappointing.
So let's go and have a look at where the results come on there. So I'll just share these up on the screen and just put the results up here. And it looks like people have been marking their own. 60% of our contact centers are good. Only 2% are outstanding. 17% average. 17% think this is my chemistry results at school, could do better. Only 4% are poor, which I think is very good. So what I'd like to now do is I'd like to drill down a little bit more and say, okay, let's have a look and say, what is your contact center response time to emails? So this is not your target. This is what you actually managed to achieve. So what is your contact center response time to emails? Stuart, you do a lot of work with email. What do you guess the average answer that would be?
I would imagine that we are going to see most of them around 4 hours to a day. I would imagine a day is probably the most popular choice that we'll get.
Okay, well let's have a look at the results that have come through. Here, this is a sample size of 84, and share the results up here. And well, not far off there. One day, 6% is 1 week, 18% 4 hours. What's surprising here is only 4% of 1 hour and 8% of 15 minutes. So, Paul, it strikes me as a dichotomy. They've all rated themselves as good, but most contact centres in the audience are still taking a day to respond to an email.
Yeah,
what's your take on that?
I can only assume it's because they're actually focused on sort of other channels. So in other words, phone, live chat, and supporting the kind of digital sort of community, social media. I would imagine that that's the priority because, as you say, 4 hours to a day isn't kind of good as a standalone email channel.
And I do wonder if this is why we're seeing such a growth in web chat, Stuart, is that you're not down at the 1 hour or the 15-minute mark. You're actually down more like the 15 seconds to say 5 minutes mark to get a web chat handled.
Agree. Yeah, I mean, our customers frequently report that email is the most expensive channel to deal with, and it's the least customer friendly in terms of their CSAT scores. And we see a lot of people trying to shift demand away from email to web chat for these reasons, I guess. So, yeah.
So interesting. So still on the subject of contact center transformation, I'd like to pose a question of the audience. If you'd like to type into the chat room, in 1 or 2 words, what do you most want to change in your contact center? So what is it that you most want to transform in your contact center? Let's have a look at some of the results coming up. So Matt has said customer focus is the area that he'd most like to change in his contact center. We've got quite a number of people typing in. Robin, Claire, Andy. Claire says optimization of the contact center to be more efficient. Nicole says the customer experience and efficiency of staff. Anna says improving communication between teams. I think that's quite an important one there. Response time, says Ahmed. Rebecca says getting in touch on social media. There's more contact options available. And he said a composite view of customer interactions. I guess that's trying to get a complete view of the customer. Robin said a more proactive customer service than reactive. So trying to get some value out in the contact center. Multi-channeling, says Suzette. Emma says brand awareness, which is imperative for our type of business. Natasha says multi-skilling of staff. And Jade says raising the bar and exceeding customer expectations all of the time. So that's quite there's no sort of single message coming across other than, trying to see if we can do better, but quite a dichotomy. What's your take on that, Paul?
It's going to make some of our presentations quite challenging to touch all of those bases in the space of 45 minutes, but we will see what we can do.
And there's quite a number in there that's quite interesting. Multi-skilling and multi-channeling, both, Stuart. I guess they're sort of quite complex ones to get your head around technology-wise.
They are, yeah, and it's interesting that a lot of people have this ambition to have this agent that can do anything, that can deal with any number of different channels. But actually, what we tend to find is that what often works better is agents specialising in certain areas. So you might find an agent that's great at web chat, isn't so good on the phone, or you might find that the team that do the social media have a very specific set of skills that lend themselves quite nicely to that particular channel, but not others. So, I think this ambition of having this universal agent is great, but it doesn't always translate to real life.
Yeah, indeed. Well, we're going to hand across to Paul Wheel now, and Paul will be taking us through some of the ways that we can transform a contact center, and I think with a sort of focus around customer effort as well. Paul, would you like to take us through your ideas?
Yes, as you know, John T, I like my visual metaphors, so here's a nice little graphic for you. We believe the young lady is climbing across a rock face upside down. That's what we believe. I guess my question is that really worth the effort? Is there not an easy way of sort of doing things? So in terms of what we understand by customer effort and how it applies to our world of contact centres, and I think we can summarise it really by asking the question, is your company easy to do business with? And that definition of business effort comes in different forms. I think we could express it as what the academics call cognitive effort. So that might be something like how easy is it to understand terms and conditions, small print, etc. It's also to do with the amount of time it takes to complete an activity, and that could in the contact centre be negatively perceived if you have to wait too long, or if the actual process itself takes too long, has too many touch points. And then importantly there is the emotional perception, and that's about negative and positive energy. I think we'd all recognise that if we find a process frustrating, that often brings out negative feelings in us, and that would translate to us not thinking that the business is easy to do business with.
And that's quite interesting, because it's sort of not necessarily the effort that people put in, it's them what their emotional memory of that effort was. And last week's webinar, our speaker made the point that we're really in the business of customer experience memory management, that actually doesn't matter if they had a bad time coming in, as long as they remember it as a good outcome. That was one of the key takeaways from that one. I guess sizing your emotional connection there.
Absolutely, absolutely. In terms of the business focus on trying to reduce customer effort, make it easier to do business with, then that is driven by a belief that it's tied into loyalty. I guess in my mind the jury's slightly split in terms of the evidence about this. Certainly BT have done quite a bit of research, and with their own customer base have provided a study that shows a 40% reduction in loss of customers, of churning of customers. And they put that down to simplifying processes and looking at different touch points and making improvements. Yes, but the sort of flip side of that is that I think it does depend very much on the customer's mindset. So in other words, if the customer thinks something's going to be easy but it isn't, then that actually means that they potentially will move on and look elsewhere. So if you think about online processes or online activities, it's very easy to actually click off during some sort of account opening type activity and then go to the next provider. So that would suggest that that actually effort doesn't necessarily apply to loyalty if you can't get the customers to join you in the first place. I think taking a step back, then actually what this is about is thinking about the key moments of truth during some sort of customer journey, whether that's a sales journey or a service journey, and actually understanding what the elements of effort are at that point in time, and then trying to pinpoint to say how you can do it better. And what I'm going to cover next are a couple of project examples that I've worked on where customer effort has been front of mind in actually making improvements. So the question is, where do you start? I think you start by something which customers find difficult. And the first example comes from my current project, which is with a global airline. They have a very effective web chat capability, initially put in place to support sales, and that is very easy to kind of justify. If a customer is booking a flight online and use a live chat agent to assist them with that process, then that drives up conversion, potentially drives up average order value. The whole thing kind of works. What they then noticed was that on the service side of their business, they've made some changes to the way in which the advanced seat assignment process works. So this is the ability ahead of time to go in and allocate your seats. And that's essentially a completely online process. And they'd noticed that they were having significantly more calls associated with this process change. So we started to put web chat on those pages associated with actually checking in and making this assignment. And what they discovered were kind of a couple of things that were fairly easy to fix. Firstly, the point at which you log on, you actually get asked for a 6-digit or letter code, which is the airline's locator code. That's what you use to find your booking. And what they discovered was that for a number of customers, if you book through a travel agent, then actually the travel agent has a different reference number compared to the airline's locator code. And what customers were doing was putting the wrong number in and getting rejected. So again, that led to a very simple change to put more information on the website to indicate what this particular sort of locator code used. They also found that there were some difficulties in terms of actually tying up some of the supplementary information that was used to actually verify the customer. And by actually using live chat agents to, when someone is struggling, to say, you know, who are you, where are you flying to and from, date of travel, what they could then do is actually look in the passenger reservation system to make sure that the customer details were appropriate. And in some instances we're able to say, oh, well, what the problem is that the way the booking's been set up, your first name and middle name has been concatenated, and that's what you need to put into this particular field. So we discovered a number of things that were to do with data and cleansing, and also to be able to feed back to the web team where there were particular problems with the actual operational system. So live chat in that instance, valuable method of customer insight, as well as being very much liked by sort of customers, which was evidenced by the sort of feedback surveys.
That's quite interesting, because I guess things like we tend to use reference numbers quite heavily, and if you're working through other channels, there can be a whole range of different reference numbers. And I guess names, if someone's got a double-barreled surname, I knew this chap in hotel reservations were often in the last part of his name there, so you'd have to say, is it under this name or is it under the last part of it? And I guess also when if you're dealing in places like France, where often your surname comes before your first name, and if you have a name like Paul James, it could be James Paul, depending on how it gets entered in the system. It's not always clear, it can easily get transposed, I guess.
Yeah, indeed. The second example is from a different industry. This is retail banking. So the scenario here was that the bank had a lot of reliance on telephone banking. It was also introducing kind of mobile and sort of online. But with the telephone banking, the way that the security works is that you need to provide two pieces of information when you enter the IVR. Firstly, you need to identify yourself, which might be via a number on a sort of debit card, or it could be their kind of sort code, sort of account number. And to be fair, most people have that to hand. But then they're also asked for a separate piece of information to do with a passcode, which would have been sent to them by letter. Now, most people either can't recollect receiving this or don't have it to hand, and therefore what that means is that although they've been identified, they can't be verified, which means they can't then go on to use the telephone self-service functions, which means they then fall out and sort of speak to an agent. What the agent has to do is then complete an alternative ID&V process, so ask them personal information around account history, recent transactions, etc. And what they were finding was that this was adding at least 60 seconds to the average handle time. So, and was a kind of a backward step for a customer to sort of go through. So they've actually developed a very strong business justification to use voice biometrics. What they found was that there were a customer segment of frequent callers that, funny enough, were those that were most difficult to change by way of behaviour. So therefore they never had a passcode to hand. They were always the one requiring the alternative verification process. So actually for those customers to collect a voice imprint as a byproduct of a conversation with an agent, such that the next time they can be recognised by their voice, that makes a tremendous difference in terms of not only saving that AHT, but also trying to influence the future customer behaviour. So again, an example of really looking at a process from the customer's viewpoint and saying what's going to make it easier for them to actually transact.
Indeed. And I mean, voice biometrics has sort of presumably changed quite a lot over the years. I probably first came across it 5 or 6 years, but it seems to be very slow to adopt. I guess, Stuart, you're more familiar with the technology. Where is it now in terms of its maturity?
Sure. I mean, I think the underlying technology has been quite mature for a number of years now. We actually showcased it at Call Center Expo about 8 years ago now. And at the time, we had lots of interest. People were kind of really interested in what it could do. And we thought, right, this is going to take off now. But it's only really been the last 18 months that we've seen a real explosion in interest. And I think a lot of that's driven by, the success that Barclays have had in deploying it. We had an event just a few weeks ago talking about it to our clients, and so I think that the technology's been mature for some time. It's the organisations are now ready and willing to adopt it because of the fraud, shifting over to the voice channel, and this new focus on reducing customer effort as well.
And Paul, is it still quite complex to get the voices into the system, or is that relatively straightforward now?
I think, as Stuart says, the technology is now pretty mature. So the ability to collect that information, that unique voice print, as a byproduct of a natural conversation in the same way that we're kind of chatting now, that's actually pretty much there in 98% of the time, something like that. There's always an issue about customers understanding that this is what's happening. And that they don't feel that it's a big brother type sort of technology. And I think it does lend itself well to those transactions where people do actually call in sort of regularly. The Barclays Wealth example that Stuart mentions, there are some really good YouTube videos on that, and I think they were the earliest adopters, because customers ringing in regularly in order to do investment type transactions. This is a massive time saver for them. So, but that's now growing into certainly the example that I mentioned into the world of retail banking, which is a much more sort of mass market sort of type approach.
Thank you.
So really, just to conclude, where do you start? Well, I said you started at 0, and it should be as easy as 1, 2, 3. A slightly flippant end, but really my point is that look at the end-to-end customer journeys, whether they're telephony-based or whether they're online or using some correspondence-type channels, and look for those areas that customers find difficult. You may well have some stats that can help you to identify those points in the process that customers drop out, and then focus on seeing how you could improve the customer effort for those particular scenarios.
Thank you, Paul. I think customer effort is certainly something that makes obvious sense. What I find is actually that to reduce customer effort is not actually a simple task. It takes an awful lot of effort to reduce the customer effort, which is, I think, why it's still so complex. It seems like, let's cut the effort out of it, but actually there's an awful lot of work that we've got to do to make all the processes join up. So.
Yeah, I suppose as a consultant, I would say I'm sort of glad it's that way, because it keeps me employed.
Right, thank you very much for that. Well, we're now going to have a look at and drill down to one of the points that Paul raised there, and looking at customer satisfaction, customer effort. Just like to put up a poll, which is how will you measure customer satisfaction in the future in your transformed contact center? Will you measure it through a classic CSAT, or customer satisfaction score, which is, I guess is the percentage of satisfied customers? Will you do it through Net Promoter? Would you recommend our company? Would you use it through the customer effort? how much effort did you have to put in? Would you do it through first contact resolution, or would you use it through quality scores? You can vote for, so perhaps you can vote for the top 3 in here. So it'd be interesting to see what the results are. Paul, if you could only pick one, which one would you have picked?
Well, first of all, I have to say, John T, I'm really pleased that average handle time hasn't come up from this poll. So I think you did well not to give people that sort of option. So hopefully we've moved away these days from measuring a good call as how long it actually took. But no, I think I'd be interested to see how well customer effort does. So
here we are, customer effort. Unfortunately, is our lowest one on the list. Encouragingly, 1/3 of the audience would be using customer effort. It does seem there's no overall consensus, and maybe it is a combination of different measures. I've never been a great believer in the silver of the bullet. There's just one measurement that you need. I always liken it a bit to happiness and your bank account. Certainly people are generally happier if they've got some money in their bank account than if they aren't. I've met some very miserable rich people in my time, some very happy poor people. So I think just looking at one level can be oversimplified in there. But certainly, see, customer satisfaction still seems here. First contact resolution seems to, in a lot of the polls we do, seems to be increasing there. Stuart, quality scores seem to be, a perpetual favourite. Is that because it's sort of easy to measure and easy to act on?
I guess so. Yeah. I mean, as you say, it's probably the easiest one of the metrics we have listed here to capture, but it's a very internally focused metric typically. So, it's interesting to see the results here. As you say, first contact resolution we see as being a very popular one. A net promoter, that's kind of been the main sort of staple of the industry for a number of years now, but we've seen more recently that customer effort started to pick up as something that's measured alongside all of the things that were just listed. So.
Yeah, and I think the one challenge with quality scores is most people only ever do it on the agent side of the conversation.
Yeah.
They don't score what was the overall experience from the moment the customer, doing it from a customer perspective, from the moment the customer hit the system and had to navigate through the IVR system and all the queues. I think so it's a sort of slightly distorted metric. Well, we're now going to jump across to Megan in the newsroom, and Megan has been actively monitoring the chat room. Megan, so have we got any questions or comments that have come through from the audience?
Yeah, the chat room's been quite busy today, so we're going to start with an opinion that's come through from Mike. It says, when it comes to rating your contact centre, no matter how good, you can always do better, which is a nice positive note to start off on, and something everyone should follow really, I suppose. We've also had a tip in from Sookie, who said, we offer web chat 24/7. We are also working on how the lines are introduced and promoting self-serve on the website. Stuart, I take it that's quite important, not just having the channel, but promoting it in the right way?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, where we see web chat as being really successful, it essentially intelligently tracks people's behaviour on website and only launches a chat if it thinks that it's appropriate. I think if you start launching chat offers to everybody, then you tend to overwhelm the team that's dealing with it and you don't really get very good results. So I think being targeted about how you do it is key for it to be successful.
Brilliant. We've also had another tip in from Natasha saying we've invested in putting all of our people through a customer experience program. This aims to help staff make the connection emotionally to our customers, moving from a process mindset to an experience mindset. We've had another tip in then from Suzette saying we're trying to train face-to-face advisors to be able to be telephone advisors too. One of the main reasons is because the face-to-face advisors can have too much time available in bad weather conditions, while the telephone staff get inundated with calls. Paul, do you think this is a good idea, sharing resources between different teams?
Yeah, I've certainly seen a number of councils go down this route, so they have face-to-face walk-in clinics, as the correspondent says, if then those people are not, if the footfall isn't there, then there is still the demand, and it just comes through a different channel. So this is a kind of a classic multi-skilling approach.
Okay, and you don't think anyone suffers too much from being spread a bit too thinly, or?
No, I think it's about ensuring that your resources can be deployed sort of flexibly. Sort of bad weather's quite topical, isn't it, at the moment? So, that could even extend to customers being able to sort of work from home, and that's another way of sort of overcoming sort of travel issues.
Oh, brilliant.
Certainly in snow environments, call centres that work from home seem to be the least affected by service problems during snow.
Okay, we've had another tip from Suzette saying, we multi-skill most advisors to deal with other services, however they have their main primary skill and others are secondary, and that also seems like a good response to having multi-skilled advisors. Then we've had an opinion from Malcolm saying currently a manager is doing emails but it's taking 8 to 24 hours for follow-up to happen. We deal with emergency social service assistants and our contacts need to follow through faster than that. Stuart, do you have any advice on how that could possibly be improved?
Well, I think probably that's where technology comes into play. Having the ability to be able to, accurately schedule and forecast for starters, so report on things. Still lots and lots of organisations are using Outlook as an email channel, and it becomes very difficult to then measure effectively and therefore resource effectively. So I think that's probably the key, really, is getting that sorted, and then obviously making sure you've got enough people to deal with that channel.
Okay, thank you. We've got a final tip now from Natasha that says the customer experience program is made up of various modules aimed at helping staff create the connection and treat everyone as a customer. It gives them tools and techniques which aim to help them own and navigate the conversation and build their confidence. It's visiting the listening skills required to convey accurate empathy and understanding with each and every customer. Paul, do you see this sort of thing in a lot of call centres?
Yeah, this comment from Natasha sort of takes me back to the first time a number of years ago when I was one of my judging experiences, which actually was British Gas down in Cardiff, and they'd used an approach whereby they trained their frontline staff to understand a customer's personality from the way they're speaking on the phone, and they broke it down that either someone's a controller, I want this and I want it now, so very functionally orientated, someone's a thinker, someone's a feeler, and someone's a sort of comedian. So a comedian's one that always likes to talk, lots of kind of laughter in the sort of conversation. And what they managed to do was create an awareness with the frontline staff that meant that they understood and recognised how then to deal with each of those different personality types. And what they then found was, and they then measured it through kind of customer feedback, post-call surveys, that the levels of engagement and the levels of satisfaction and NPS went absolutely through the sort of roof. So absolutely echo what Natasha's doing here in terms of, that is right up there in terms of, going from sort of good to sort of great in terms of managing your sort of customer sort of situation.
Yeah, and we went to a story on British Gas after your visit, and there is a little breakdown on the personality profiling. So if you type personality profiling into call centre help, you should be able to see some of the results of that article. So it's very good. The one that struck me is that there's a personality type called a controller, and that's someone who phones up and doesn't want any chit-chat, just wants the call over as quickly as possible. Yep. It's recognising that person. Yep. And getting that one over is, but the entertainer wants to have a chat. Yep. So it's, dealing different ones with different, recognising different people want different things from the contact centre. So thank you very much for that, Megan. We'll be coming back to top tips and questions from the audience later, and I will be asking Paul Wild at the end of the webinar to pick the winning tip, who's going to receive either a box of chocolates or a bottle of champagne, their choice. So I'm just going to pass the baton now across to Stuart Dolman from Sabio. And Stuart's going to take us through some of the ways that technology is transforming both customer interactions and also the contact center as well. So Stuart, if you'd like to, we've got your slides up there, if you'd like to take you through your presentation.
Sure, thank you, John T. So just to start with, it's really interesting hearing Paul talk about customer effort, and particularly interesting seeing the results back at the poll, actually. Similar to Paul, I've been lucky enough to be involved in judging the European Contact Centre Awards for the last 5 years. And in the last year in particular, we saw a big increase in the number of people that were measuring customer effort score, but alongside things like Net Promoter Score. So, and for me, I think that really reflects what we're seeing now in terms of this new way in which customers are wanting to interact with us. So previously, going back to your point earlier, John T, when we used to talk to customers 3 or 4 years ago, it was very much focused on what happened when the customer picked up the telephone, and how could we make their journey through the IVR as seamless as possible, and then how could we equip the agents with the right tools and knowledge and quality and so on to be able to service that customer. But increasingly now, what we're having conversations with customers about is what happens before their customer picks up the telephone. How can we make sure that we service them online as effectively as possible? But then if they do need to speak to somebody, how can we make sure that that context of who they are is transitioned over, and therefore the effort is taken out of the process of them having to jump channels to maybe pick up the telephone and call and have to explain the problem all over again. So I think what customer effort does is capture that quite nicely, that end-to-end customer journey. So I quite like that. So moving on then, just before we go any further, I'd like to do a quick poll if we can. So I'm quite interested to understand how many of the audience measure how much demand is generated by their website. So this is how much demand into their call center is generated by their website.
So I'll just put the poll up here. So do you measure how much of your call demand is generated by your website? Answer is very straightforward. Yes, no, or not sure, if you'd like to do that. So this is, I guess, number of, do you measure the number of phone calls that are coming off, off your website?
It could be you have a dedicated number, for example. It could be that there's some sort of survey that you use. It could be that you measure traffic to your contact us page of your website, or there could be a click to dial button or something that you use.
Okay, let's have a look at the results of the poll. 46% no, 29% yes, and 25% not sure. So looks like about a third of our audience are doing it, just a shade under.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I think it's something that increasingly we're seeing, organisations interested in wanting to measure, but often not quite sure exactly how to do it. So.
Okay, thanks, Stuart. So I'll pass the baton back to.
Thank you.
Back to you.
So, I guess interestingly, a survey was carried out by one of our partners, Nuance, last year, and what they found was that 52% of callers to the contact centre were either on the website at the point of calling, or at least had been on the website very recently. So I guess what that goes to show is that either customers are going online and potentially not getting what they need, they're not able to self-serve, or potentially they're going online and just going straight to the contact us page, finding a telephone number, and then using that as a way of driving demand. And I think that's a real opportunity for all of the organisations that that we speak to. If you can better self-serve, if you can create a better experience, then clearly it's going to take effort out of the whole process for customers and deliver a much better experience for them.
I think it's quite interesting, the number of contact centres that have a message saying, thanks for calling, you get your answer to the problem on the website, don't potentially realise that 52% of the callers are actually on the website, and the reason they're calling you is because they can't get the answer on the website. And it's quite interesting when you say, who owns the customer service section of the website? Because I think in terms of customer transformation, that ownership of not necessarily getting the whole of it from website, but a bit like people doing with Twitter feeds, getting to own a sort of portal, I guess, subsection of the website is quite key.
Yeah.
I had exactly that experience earlier this week. I was trying to pay a sort of annual bill, and I went onto the provider's website, and the payment option wasn't working, and it was outside of office hours, so I couldn't call in. or I called in and the office was closed. So I went and sent an email, slightly frustrated, I'm trying to use your payment option, doesn't work. They emailed me back the following morning, which was inside a reasonable time, to tell me that they didn't support the latest versions of Internet Explorer. So I thought, well, that's the reason why it doesn't work. So I thought I had no option but to actually call in. I called in, I was queuing for 5 minutes, and exactly, John T, what you said. It told me I should go to the website, and it told me I should send them an email. At that point, I put the phone down.
Yeah, I think that's a great example of just disjointed customer service. I think it's a really important thing that the contact center managers should think about is how much demand, genuine demand, is being created by their website, and is it bad demand? Can they do anything about it to fix it? So, and I think if we look at this challenge, I think it's only going to increase as time goes on as well. If what you see on the screen now are the statistics of the smartphone penetration into the European markets, but if we look at the UK, for example, 71% of the UK population now own a smartphone. Okay, so obviously that gives them access to the internet wherever they are. So a question I quite often ask is, how many people are calling into your contact centre from one of these smartphone devices, and is there anything you can do to leverage the power of that device and create a better experience? Potentially using mobile applications, click to dial, whatever. There's a whole host of different ways that can be done. Chat, for example. And then looking forward, as I say, the problem, or the opportunity, I should say, will only increase. It's predicted that by 2017, 90% of the UK population will own a smartphone. So, at that point, that's classified as being saturation, the saturation point. The vast majority of people will own one of these devices.
And that's not very far off, is it?
It's not. I mean, we're 2 years away from that. Yeah, we're 2 years away from that. And I think the other interesting point here is that recently, when the government auctioned off the 4G network, which is a high-speed, wireless network, the latest, that's built into most phones these days, they mandated that 98%, whoever took a license, 98% of the population should be covered by their 4G network by the year 2017. So again, we're getting to the point where we've got ubiquitous access to smartphone devices or tablets. We've got pretty much ubiquitous high-speed internet connections, and again, that creates a tremendous opportunity to leverage some of these capabilities to deliver better customer experiences. So what we're predicting, looking forward, is that most of your relationships with your customers will either start or potentially be, entirely managed through these mobile devices. And the other interesting point as well is that we're seeing customers' expectations set by experiences they're having with other organisations. So if you take Amazon, for example, they've got a fantastic mobile experience. If you look at things like Uber, to order a taxi, or Open Table to book a table. Even National Rail Inquiries have got a great, mobile experience, and that really is catering for a lot of the demand, and that's setting people's expectations about what customer service should be, and therefore, what the experience should be from your organisation. So I guess what that means is that when we go and speak to organisations today, we still see a lot of silos between the people that are managing the digital element of the strategy and the contact centre. And quite often, these two separate entities don't often talk, as the example that Paul just gave illustrated. And that creates what we call a customer service gap. So if more and more of my customers are starting their journey online, and then potentially they need support from the contact centre, we need to make sure that those two parts of the organisation are joined together, and there's a cohesive strategy that covers that end-to-end customer journey, not just not a fragmented journey as we often see today.
And how big do you think the gap is? I mean, is it significant? Is it widespread in most organisations? Have some companies really sort of got this gap down?
I still think the gap's fairly big. I mean, we're starting now to see more and more, when we sit around the table, more of the digital guys and the contact centre guys sitting together. But it's, I think if you look at, it's very difficult to quote great examples of organisations that have really got this nailed. I think Amazon's probably the best one. If you go to their Contact Us page and then you transition into their contact centre, it's a really seamless experience. Not many organisations, in my mind, have achieved that.
And certainly from an organisational perspective, too many organisations actually have the digital people separately from the contact centre, and likewise the digital revenues accounted financially separately from the contact centre, but actually the two channels need to be much more integrated. So there's almost a kind of a sort of maturity stage to sort of go through. You start with silos and then realise that you have to knock down those barriers, otherwise you aren't going to get harmony.
And is this, do you think, tied into the fact that, you know, often in an organisation, you know, online sales goes under the sales director, you know, the nice marketing and website is owned by marketing, and, you know, you've also got customer service in the mix. So you've actually got your marketing director, the sales director, the customer service director as three independent fiefdoms, if you like, you know, with their own silo. So it's sort of really embedded into the organisation's DNA.
Yeah.
You know, trying to join that, you know, organisational DNA together is quite tough.
Even more acute if it's a retail organisation, because, you know, you've got shops as well. So you know, where does the revenue count if someone's been and looked online, or even comes into the shop but actually using their sort of smartphone to check sort of stock levels? You know, where does that get recorded?
Yeah.
And does it really matter?
Yeah. No, I agree. You know, I think, but there's a tremendous opportunity to get this right, and I think if organisations can tackle those internal silos and start to focus on the end-to-end customer journey, then there's a great opportunity to really reduce customer effort, and hopefully that means, you know, that translates to increased customer loyalty.
And does the technology have you know, make it a lot easier to make this gap smaller?
It does, yeah. I'm going to come on to talk about that in a second, actually. I've got some examples of different technologies that can be applied at different stages of the customer journey to try and reduce customer effort, so I'll talk about that shortly. I guess before I move on to that, though, I've got another poll here, and really just sort of building on the discussion that we just had. So I'd like to ask the audience if there is a single owner of the customer journey within their organisations, or do they still have these silos?
So the question is, do you have a single owner of the customer journey in your organisation? Now I'm guessing the answer to this is probably not going to be terribly high on the yes side, but it would be interesting to see this. So let's share the results up with you up on the screens here. Sample size of 90, 22% yes, 59% no.
I think the no's and the not sure's know what they have to do next then.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, so there's a great opportunity there to join those things together and improve the customer experience.
Thank you. So I'll pass the baton back to you.
Thank you. Okay, so just to finish up then, I've got an example here of what that could look like. So if we look at mapping the customer journey, I think the first point is to understand what triggers the customer to contact you in the first place? What's the call to action? You know, is it an advert they've seen on TV? Is it an idea they've had about something? Conversation down the pub? You know, a letter that you sent them, or maybe something they've seen on social media? I think understanding that's the first point. And then what we can then do is start to break down the customer journey and measure efforts at each of those different touch points. So first of all, the customer acts on their call to action. Typically the first thing they would do is get online. They might do a Google search either for your organisation or the problem that they're trying to solve, and then they'll go on and browse your website. So what can we do to help there? Well, you know, if it's a customer that uses your service frequently, then maybe a mobile application would serve them quite well. There's some really good examples of organisations that have implemented mobiles, and they've become a great, you know, initial point of contact for people. Web chat, we talked about this earlier on. You know, proactively launching web chat to try and detect customers that are having difficulty on your website, and then helping them to self-serve, I think is key. And also web usability. You know, it's really important to make sure that your website is easy to use for customers and is focused on the kind of tasks that they are looking to achieve, as opposed to, you know, reams of information about your, you know, various different products and services. So if the customer can't solve their problem online, the next thing they typically do is go to the Contact Us page. Okay, they'll find your telephone number, and then typically they will dial the number and hopefully speak to someone in your contact centre. So what can we do there to help? Well, there's this concept that we call Intelligent Contact Us, and this is really similar to what I explained earlier with Amazon. This whole idea about taking a customer through a process, not just bombarding them with telephone numbers, but trying to identify why it is they're calling, you know, suggesting frequently asked questions to them. And then when they get to the point where you've established their reason for contacting, then using that information intelligently to either offer them the right channel or passing that over to someone in the contact centre. Click to dial is another example there. So instead of having the customer dial the number, why not get them to put their telephone number in and you call them back and they get to speak to an agent straight away without having to queue. So I think that's an underused technology that could be used more effectively. Assuming the customer then dials the number, they then go through and navigate your IVR. They might do this in the IVR, or they might do it when they speak to an agent, but they'll ID themselves, they'll verify themselves. So what can we use there? Well, speech recognition technologies, again, take effort out of this process if they're designed in the right way. They make it easier for customers to interact and provide that information. Paul touched on this earlier on voice biometrics. We're seeing a huge interest in this at the moment as a way of taking effort out of the process of verifying repeat callers or potentially increasing security as well. And then obviously once you've got that information, it's critical that you use it and screen pop it to an agent. And then finally, when the call gets through to the agent, the customer will explain the problem. In many cases, unfortunately, that agent will be the wrong person to deal with it, so the call will be transferred. The customer then has to explain the problem again. Hopefully then the agent can access the information and they can resolve the customer's problem. So what are the technologies that can help there? First of all, intelligent routing. I think this is a really key one. Using information about the customer to make much more informed decisions about where which team, which person is best served to serve them. Knowledge management as well, providing your advisor with information, timely, relevant information to help them solve the customer's problem. And looking at unified desktops as well, our agents have these very short windows of time, 3 or 4 minutes, in which to solve a customer's problem. Having to work their way through 3 or 4 different applications can detract from that. So I think providing a unified desktop can make a really big difference to helping agents help customers. Okay, so
thank you very much for that. And Stuart, if there was one technology you said that you should implement next in the contact center, what would you say that would be?
Oh, that's a tough one. Well, if I look at what our customers are putting in, I would say web chat is the most popular one at the moment. Probably followed by the whole concept of using unified desktop technology combined with knowledge management, helping agents to help customers. I think is another area that is underexploited in this country, and I think we could do a lot more in that space as well.
And I certainly think the knowledge management, if you can use that both for the agents and actually push that back out onto the website, it's very, very powerful indeed.
Agreed.
So thank you very much for that, Stuart. A lot of food for thought overall. We're now going to jump across to Megan, and Megan will be taking us through the latest top tips and questions that have come in from you in the chat room. Very active discussion this week, as ever, on the chat room. So, Megan, do you want to take us through the exciting things that are happening?
Yeah. I'm going to start with an opinion again from Sookie. The face-to-face / phone and web chat advisors often have the same skills and service knowledge, therefore are able to move around according to the demand, which sounds like quite a useful thing to have in place. I suppose here's the $1,000,000 question from Ahmed. Should chat have a dedicated team, or is it better to have a multitasking team with voice and chat? Paul, did you want to answer that?
So going back to my global airline, what they have done is seen chat very much as a kind of jewel in the crown from an agent perspective. So you have to be an experienced voice agent, both sales and service, to then be eligible to move into chat. So they've seen chat very much as being a skill that, although physically typing and accuracy are specific to that particular channel, they've seen it to be more important that you need to be really good from a customer service perspective before being sort of eligible. So I think it depends on the value that you're trying to get from that sort of chat sort of function.
Okay, thank you for that. We've had an opinion in from Nicole that says our team works on almost every aspect, meaning at any given time one person can be answering phones, responding to emails, web app requests or faxes. I doubt it's the most efficient option, but given the limited size of the team, I'm not sure how to better allocate staff resources. Paul, would you say that there is an issue with efficiency?
The thought there for the colleagues, that sounds very much like what you have to do at night. If you run a 24/7 contact centre, then the night team have to be able to deal with all channels. They also have to be a bit of an independent state because a lot of the business support functions are not actually available to them. So if this is a small team, then I'm afraid that is an inevitability that you have to have that level of multi-working.
It's probably quite nice, I guess, for a variety perspective.
Yeah, I guess so. I think I've seen some organisations do this, and the key challenge is you've got you mentioned there are two real-time channels here. So you've got, for example, voice and web chat. Now, voice tends to be fairly all-consuming, and if you're putting someone on hold in a web chat for 4 or 5 minutes while you deal with a voice call, then that's not going to deliver great service to the web chat. So I think you need to be very careful when doing this, but I appreciate, if it's a smaller team or an out-of-hours team, then it might be the only option.
Okay, we've had a tip in from Natasha saying looking at every way a customer interacts with your brand is key, whether this be via web chat, telephone, email or letter. Customers have an expectation that the experience will be great, their effort will be minimal, and we are easy to do business with. I think it's great to explore new methods of communicating, but it's important to ensure we don't lose sight of every other way a customer may choose to interact with us. There's a tip sent in from Sookie saying for a 2-week period we changed our switchboard number, which is available on the website, to a temporary number. When customers rang this temporary number, we knew they had been on our website because it's the only place the number had been placed. Our study showed that the majority of people who rang this number did so because they didn't want to spend time looking for the information from the website, which is quite an interesting idea for just trialling what your customers are actually doing.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a good idea, Stuart, just doing that before launching into a full-blown software upgrade?
I think so, yeah. I mean, that would indicate potentially that the website, isn't serving its purpose, and if it's not easy to use and navigate, then potentially people will just, reach straight for the telephone and try and resolve their query that way. But it's definitely, I like the idea of, using that method to differentiate between calls coming in to try and measure demand. I think it's, it's a good idea to do that.
Okay, we've had another opinion in from Sookie saying there are customers willing to use the website and self-serve. Therefore, when presented with an icon to web chat, the customer may well choose the chat rather than to continue to undertake the job themselves via self-serve. The biggest challenge is not about chatting with those who are able to self-serve, it's about moving those who normally use phone and face-to-face to the website and supporting them. Paul, would you agree with that?
Yes, I would. I don't see it necessarily as being a problem if someone who normally self-serves does choose the chat option. There's I would expect there will be a reason why they feel they want to engage with someone rather than just do the functions themselves. So I think that there's always an opportunity once you engage via chat. If it's a commercial operation, you might then be able to kind of cross-sell, upsell, for example. So yeah, absolutely. How do you change customer behaviours, and particularly for those that haven't experienced an online experience or haven't had good online experiences? How do you encourage them that because your brand is strong and trusted, that you can influence them enough to try something for the kind of first time? That's a kind of marketeer's challenge.
Okay, and we've got a final tip now from Jade saying the key is not to assume you always know what the customer is looking for. Web chat is something we're considering. However, we are greatly appreciated by our customers for not being too overpowering with technology. And I think that's all we've got time for today, John T.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Some real nuggets there. We've got loads more tips through, so I'm going to review those with Paul after the call, who will be picking the winning tip. So thank you very much for that, Megan. In 1 or 2 words, I'd like to, just in the audience, if you can put into the chat room, what did you like best about today's webinar? If you'd like to just type that into the chat room. In 1 or 2 words, what did you like best about today's webinar? Slides are available on Call Center Helper. If you go to callcenterhelper.com/recorded webinars, and you'll be able to watch the replay. I know like a lot of you do like to share these with your management team or with your team. That will be available probably within about an hour's time. And just like to say thank you to our two speakers. Paul Wills, as ever, delightful to have you here. Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And thank you to Stuart for your first webinar with us. Absolutely fascinating.
Great, thank you, John.
And just like to say thank you to everyone in the audience for joining us today. And we hope you be able to join us next week when we're looking at best practice in workforce management. Thank you, everyone. Then. Bye-bye.